should have. Want to switch? Sure.
You get the podium right in front of you.
Absolutely.
Kim, how are you today?
Great.
Have you been busy?
I have been busy, very busy.
See you busy every day.
Yeah. It's good though.
You replaced 3 people.
Yeah, forget No.
Maybe.
I think we did finally get around to raise her salary.
Y'all are on it.
Gave her 3 people's jobs, didn't we? Well, maybe we all think about it too.
I think I like the deal we got.
We didn't come out to that.
You just have to tell us.
That's what we hope they will.
Yeah. You see me turn the beard, bag the size first.
That way just start. Yeah. But so I've got, that's Thursday, last for school Thursday.
I think they got one more
We'll just do it in order. Kim watched it.
He's very springy.
My wife watched it. She said that I'm so old that I have to dress up and be presentable.
I'm taking notes for you.
Would you all, I didn't know if you wanted water or soda or figure, it's probably. Derek may need coffee. You what? Derek may need a cup of coffee, he likes coffee to sleep.
Siding.
Is that the way it was originally?
No, that's not good. Well, originally, it probably was. Originally, two big windows. We took it apart from the city. Two big pictures.
Yeah.
And then sometime, I was in the 40s or 50s, when that brick building was different. And then we started.
Welcome to the August 14th.
Take out.
Welcome to the August 14th work session of the Abingdon County Council. Kim, would you please call the roll? Mike?
First door.
Please call the roll.
Thank you. Mr. Bradley?
Here.
Ms. Quetch? Here. Mr. Webb is absent at this time, but should be arriving shortly. Ms. Patterson is absent for the record, and Mayor Craig.
Here. I have a request of you guys. Right above you are very sensitive microphones, and if you talk during the meeting, she is not able to, the clerk is not able to hear the audio and prepare the minutes. So would you, if you speak to each other, please do it very quietly. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is discussion with the public and public comment. And I want to make sure everybody understands that if you want to speak about a matter on the agenda, now is the time to do it. We will entertain other comments other than matters on the agenda at this time also. But I want to make that clear. The agenda is for us to discuss what we are going to take up on the regular council agenda and what to do with the issues you raised. So if that makes it clear as mud, I guess that's okay. The first speaker is Wilma Miller.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm very well. The reason that I'm here is regarding the crosswalk in front of the store, that is Kaiser Furniture Store, and I am here representing Kaiser Furniture. I do have a letter here that I would like to read, and it is signed by 2 of the owners. And the letter does state This letter is in reference to the danger associated with the crosswalk at the intersection of West Main Street and Patton Street. As a longtime business owner in the vicinity of this crosswalk, I feel it is my obligation to voice my concerns for the safety of our town's citizens. There have been numerous close calls of automobile versus pedestrian and automobile versus automobile due to the fact, in my opinion, that this crosswalk is too close to where high volumes of traffic enter West Main Street from Patton Street and the surrounding businesses. The best and fastest solution would be to eradicate this crosswalk altogether. Thank you in advance for your quick and timely action in this matter, and that is signed by Mark Kaiser, who is the owner, and Gerald Kaiser, who is a previous owner and the general manager. As for myself, my comments, I am the office manager there. I do have direct contact with many of the customers who come in, and we have numerous complaints about it. Not only that, we do see out the window that there are several times, and I myself have had to dodge cars and people because it's in the way. I mean, it does hinder traffic. It hinders trying to get out. You're trying to get out, and somebody will be coming up through there, and they don't realize that sidewalk's there, and then they whip back out to get over, and I myself have almost wrecked numerous times. I know that we do have office rental property at the top of the hill at Patton Street, which houses the social services and the child support offices, and they have called me themselves saying that there's some issues with it. And one time I think they thought that we had it put in. But anyway, it is a danger. I've not had anyone who I've spoke to about, I've only spoke to a few people, mostly those at work, but that have liked it. And I know that crosswalks are necessary. I'm just saying that this one, it seems to be more of a hindrance than it is a help because of its location. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
The next speaker is Dr. John
Brenner.
Brenner. You're a typical
Yeah,
doctor.
it's not a
You can't
local
read your
name, it's
writing.
not a local name. People could do that sometimes. Well, you'd be amazed what some people do with it anyway. I am a local resident. Patty and I have lived in this area, mostly in Lebanon, for 25 years. And a few years ago, we got an opportunity to move over to Abingdon. And we lived in another part of Abingdon, and then we were able to build a house. And one of the reasons we built our house is that we wanted to use as our retirement occupation doing an Airbnb. So this was a year and a half ago, so you can imagine how shocked I was when I read the new ordinance, which said, and I see no reason why it is said, that we could only host for 90 days. The ordinance doesn't give any kind of indication as to why that was done. I just wanted to tell you that I have registered with the city. I bought a license. I had my home inspected, and I paid for that. And every month I pay 7% taxes on the homestays that are there. So I guess my concern is that why would we want to limit business in this community? Airbnb, if you're not all completely familiar with it, it's all done online, and people that stay with us, they want to come here because they don't want to stay in a hotel, they don't want to stay where they have food issues and the like, they just want to be in our community. And so it's an exciting kind of business to be running because it's a niche market. And I heard during the election that, everybody was talking about we need niche markets in Abingdon. And I'm thinking, well, hello, niche market, very small. And then I wonder, why would this city, who was talking about increasing businesses within the city, would want to limit us? There's another concern that you should be aware of is that if the 90-day thing, our reservations are done online, and we really don't know. I mean, we have somebody coming in November and December. If we cancel a reservation as the host, we are charged $100. And we would probably lose, may well lose our license with Airbnb. Airbnb is about culture. It's about Abingdon. It's so wonderful to meet these people and tell them about all of our stores and businesses and opportunities that are here. And now, after doing it for 1 year, we have numbers of people that are coming back to Abingdon because they stayed in an Airbnb. Thank you for your time.
Dr.
Yeah.
Brennan, I'd like to, I was on town council when the ordinance was passed. The roots of the ordinance preceded me. We have a very young town council, as you.
Yes.
They're not physically young, but young in service.
I know the concept.
Thank you, William.
Al is older than Dirk. I'll tell you what I know about it and why I voted for it, and I'll explain to you why. It came to our attention, it came to the town council's attention through our through our town attorney. She had prepared an ordinance. Apparently, there was a reason for that, and I understand the reason is that it came to the council's attention that we had people renting out their homes and making a charge for it, and they're not applying for a business license, not paying the taxes that you are paying. And that was probably, and we didn't know where they were or anything about them. And that was troubling to me for two reasons. We're not getting the revenue that we deserve, and it's not fair to other people that one business is paying taxes and another's not. The other reason was we felt that if people were going to come to Abingdon, we wanted them to have a pleasant stay, and we wanted to make certain that they were safe. You had a smoke detector in here, and all that kind of thing.
Right.
2 exits and all those regulations. We certainly didn't, I certainly didn't intend to punish anybody at all. The reason for the 90-day limit is that the homestay ordinance applies all over town. It doesn't just apply to your situation, it applies all over town. And some of us felt, and I still feel that way, there should be a limitation on how long that those people can operate during the year, because if somebody in my neighborhood, where I have a lot of children, and in my neighborhood, it's just a subdivision, the houses are close together, it's not suitable for a regular business to operate 365 days a year. So that's
But I don't see the reason for that, why you'd say it's not suitable.
Well, it's in a residential zone. It increases traffic in the neighborhood, could increase noise in the neighborhood. We expect if we invest in a home in a residential subdivision, not to have a business, because business is precluded. By passing this ordinance, we're allowing a business to some degree to operate to accommodate people that simply want to rent out a room in their home. So it's actually an accommodation to business, as opposed to, we don't intend to punish them. Now,
But you are.
Well, okay,
You are.
we want to hear that.
Yeah, and I mean, it is a punishment, it is a burden, and for somebody like me, it's quite a shocker. After I've invested in a building in this city under the expectation that I could have this.
Well, and I'm not debating it with you.
No.
Can you see the other point of view, that if someone...
Only vaguely, because if you understand, if someone, either me as a host or someone as a guest, did anything that was inappropriate, that would be the end of that business, period. I mean, if you're, because it seems to me that that's what you're concerned with. Because actually the people that we have stay with us, you probably wouldn't even know they were in our neighborhood. So I don't see any evidence. I understand what you're talking about, but I don't believe that there's any evidence for that actually being a fact.
Okay.
I mean, that's just, I understand that, but I've not seen it, and even if you read the literature on Airbnb and homestays, it's actually becoming a greater trend, in particular, worldwide.
Well, there are options for people who want to rent, you can comply with with the bed and breakfast ordinance. It's already.
Yeah,
in
but
there.
I'm not interested in feeding people.
Well, it doesn't require you to feed people.
Well, but it's a different license and it requires
Yes, it
different
is.
kinds of
It is.
expectations. That's not what I was interested in
Well, do you
doing.
have any suggestions for?
I believe the 90-day limit should be removed. That is my request of this council.
And they have no limit whatsoever?
I don't believe you don't have one on any of your hotels or your bed
But
and
they're-
breakfast.
you
Do you,
understand
do you
they're
have the
commercial.
bed and breakfast? People say that about bed and breakfast too. Sorry.
You understand that they are in a commercial zone where that use
Okay.
is appropriate. And
Okay.
it's not appropriate in the residential zone. So
Okay.
the ordinance is town-wide. So-
Okay. Then I just want you to consider that
What-
we feel, those of us that are doing this, it feels like we've actually been singled out.
Well, I assure you that that wasn't my
Okay,
intent.
it's good to hear.
And can I just add for point of clarity, Mr. Boswell's done a great deal of research, and he handed me today the upcoming depending ordinance for the Fairfax County, which probably is among the most metropolitan, upscale, trendy places around. And their ordinance, which goes into effect in October, limits it to 60 days for homestay, not 90. And their reason for citing 60 days was exactly the things that the mayor said. You're not zoned as a B&B or a hotel. It is residential. There is, and they're a little more restrictive than ours. We were looking for time limits, and they limited it to 60 days as opposed to 90. So just as a point, just to see where we are. Now, there are not many. Alexandria has one. Blacksburg has
Right.
one. What's Blacksburg? Is Blacksburg 90 as well? So,
Well, but when you say Abingdon is focused on tourism, it's an option for tourists that you would be losing for the town.
I don't disagree, you know, and however, I think there are provisions in the code, such as conversion to a bed and breakfast in compliance that would answer that issue. Because we have, how many bed and breakfasts we have in town, Jason?
I'll cut my head on
Mr. Humphries probably knows off the top of his.
that. I know,
So,
my
and-
head's off
and-
right now.
And which they, you know, they advertise on Airbnb as well. So, yeah, you know, there is another option, you know, for anybody who wanted to consider, just as a point of fact, just so everybody knows what everybody's doing.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Quinn. Next speaker is Joe Levine.
We're gonna switch
If that's okay, Michael.
is it okay if I go first then, Joe?
Oh, yeah, sure. However you all want to do it.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate the new town council for creating an atmosphere of acceptance for issues like we just heard by the citizens. I've lived in Abingdon for 3 years, live on Lowland Street. Residents of Lowland and the area consider this the other side of the tracks. The side of the tracks that most visitors to Abingdon do not experience or view. From A Street to B Street to Madison Street, Highland and Lowland. In between Highland and Lowland, we have an alley. Gets very little maintenance. The alley needs paving. When I first built my house 3 years ago, I was promised the alley would be paved once the construction of my house was done. I was promised by the person who was in charge of permits, because obviously we were gonna tear up some stuff, and the alley was in horrible shape. Nothing was done. Person resigned, and I had nobody to go to hold accountable. The next year, John Dew finished he built a new entrance on one side of the alley, and his men did a wonderful job, but it only was about a fifth of the alley. After complaining more, last year the town brought some asphalt in, and they brought it in 3 times. They did 10 feet at a time. It was leftover asphalt. In my opinion, it was cold asphalt, and it's now created a bumpy situation. But worse is they made the alley worse by a 2-inch drop off that you drop it off when you're leaving the alley and you hit it head on when you're coming in. So I had Mr. Bowick come up and inspect the alley with me. And I proposed a special pickup day for the residents that are living in our unnamed alley. Special day that the town might pick up large tree stumps. We have concrete steps, concrete blocks. These are all hindrances to the children that are playing in the alley, to the elderly people that come from Elder Spirit that use the alley to walk their dogs and walk around. And I know most of the items that are there are the responsibility of the homeowners, but a good way would be, in my opinion, to get a truck and encourage the homeowners by picking up these items that aren't normally picked up on a regular basis, get rid of them, and of course, pave the alley. The alley right now has better grass growing out the center of it than I have in my yard. It's not being maintained. And I think we ought to take the first step to create some pride in the other side of the tracks. We did see another lady at the town council meeting, I believe, talk about areas on A Street and stuff. And I wish the town council would take more consideration to this area.
Thank you, Mr. Trepco.
Does that alley have a name?
What?
Does that alley have a name? He said unnamed. It's unnamed? Not
I
named.
don't believe so.
Okay.
All right,
Trepicione's Way sounds great.
Jody, you want to go now? You signed up.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm actually addressing the council tonight as the president of Friends of Abington. I've had several of our members ask me to address a couple of points. Particularly the construction at the Meadows that now runs from 7 in the morning till 11 at night, which coincides with the noise ordinance. Actually two of the members have asked that it's supposed to be 7 to 11 and they're allowed to have construction because of the noise ordinance. But if they're allowed to start and it's the noise ordinance that is setting the 7 to 11 time, then they're asking, please don't have the trucks starting up and backing up and all the noise that you get from the heavy construction trucks backing up at 6:45 getting ready to start at 7. The other thing is, you know, this whole project, and some other of the members have asked, the dynamiting, that's, you know, we thought at one point it was said that the blasting would stop at 7 and the construction could continue to 9, but now I guess the blasting can continue past that. But it's a residential type area there, and for the future, when you start considering ordinances, you might consider that the noise ordinance should not be a one-size-fits-all for the whole town. You know, a 7 in the morning to 11 at night noise ordinance is probably great for downtown where you've got restaurants and activities going on. For a residential area where children are going to school in the mornings, to have 7 to 11 for your noise ordinance and allowing heavy construction in the middle of a residential area, just the idea of you can't change it immediately, but consider a alternate to the noise ordinance that might be neighborhood specific.
Like by zoning?
Like by zoning.
The next speaker is Mr. Humphreys.
Oh, good evening, everybody. Good evening, Mayor Craig and town administrator or town manager.
Interim.
Interim. That's a funny first name, man. There's two things I wanted to talk to you about tonight. One of them is just a little past history about why the median is down the way it is, or the crosswalk is the way it is, down on the corner of Patton, which would be the east side of Patton, and Main Street. And the other is just to mention briefly about the lot or the lack of parking that's at the muster grounds. And so let me just start first of all with the one down on Main Street, the crosswalks. Good evening, Mayor Craig and Abington Council. My main question for council would be, how can we safely get people from one side of the street of West Main to the other side of West Main Street. Because of the number of people that come from Bradley Street, and in particular, the Abingdon Manor, Renaissance Crossing, West Main Street to purchase personal items, how do we protect their safety? Public health and safety being our number one charge, of course. I personally have been involved in a car versus pedestrian accident in which the pedestrian was hit and killed on West Main Street. I was not only witness to this event, but I was with the man trying to render first aid as he died. He had walked down from the Renaissance House on Bradley Street. My question again is, we have allowed businesses on both sides of West Main Street. We market ourselves as a walkable community, so how do we safely get pedestrians from one side of West Main Street to the other? At present, the Patton Street, West Main Street crosswalk is the only semblance of a crosswalk in which pedestrians can have at least a modest sense of security. It has been proposed once that maybe the vehicle speed could be reduced to 15 miles an hour through there to help these businesses prosper and pedestrians be given the safety that they deserve. Maybe a combination of existing crosswalk or multiple crosswalk with the reduction of speed limit would be a way to protect our citizens as well as our visitors. As a postscript, solving this problem could also allow the expansion of more tourist-friendly businesses that would draw visitors and Abingdonians to more of the West Main Street area, giving the town a largeable, walkable footprint. And pedestrians in that area would not have to run across the street through 4 lanes of traffic, hoping they could make it to the other side. So that's kind of some of the history. I'm the one that pushed for that crosswalk because the gentleman got killed right there. And of course then we had other problems after that, which are the pedestrians coming from the Renaissance House, Abingdon Manor, and being killed by trains. And we've had at least 2 or 3 incidences. I don't know what to call it, Chief Sullivan or what anymore, but anyway, Mr. Sullivan could probably enlighten us on how many people have actually been killed in a pedestrian manner. And so it's at least probably 3. I think 2 off the top of my head, but I think there's another one in there somewhere. But that's happened continually, them coming across there. And so trying to and by the way, Mr. Craig had mentioned to me, I talked to him earlier about there's a crosswalk where the old bus station used to be, and there is a crosswalk there. I take that back. I did not realize it was. That sign's not there very often because people pull out and hit that, knock the pedestrian sign over that says stop in the walkway. They're continually hitting that one, as well as the one on Cumming Street, Bradley Street, the one there at the end that's come across the Airborne Bridge. That one is getting mangled pretty often. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. That's what was done.
Let me ask you a couple questions, Rick, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
Do you think that if we were able to get a sidewalk on Preston Street or, at that crosswalk, that would alleviate the concerns that people have? I'm not sure it's a good idea to put crosswalks and encourage people to cross those railroad tracks.
No, well, I don't think I don't think that we legally can. That's a railroad right away.
Yeah.
So we can't actually encourage people to do that. But there has to be something workable, maybe with the railroad, maybe some suggestions that they would have. What happens is if you all know where Renaissance House and Abingdon Manor is, that's at the very end of Bradley Street. So if they cut across there, they come out at about William Street, where William Street is down there. They come down because that's the quickest way, and then they try to cross over the tracks and then come over. The guy that was killed, the one that I was involved in, he had come across William Street. He'd gone over, and what they're getting is they're getting cigarettes and snacks and Cokes, and they're getting at that little grocery store on the corner right there. And that's where they're headed to. He started coming back across, it was about at Meade Realty. He got hit. He had a walker with him, and then knocked the walker past the liquor store all the way to the beginning of the Southern States. Knocked both of his shoes off, disrobed him somewhat. It wasn't a pretty sight. He suffered initially. He actually kind of passed away, and they brought him back to life. The life saving crew got there, and then they med-flighted him, leaving at the Kaiser Building, leaving up there at 268 Patton Street, which is the thing. So anyway, I know it's a lot. I know that's a long.
That's okay. The other question I had for you is, is there any opportunity? You know where it seems like there's a path or an easement or something under the railroad track at Walgreens. Is there any opportunity to make that a pedestrian walkway?
You know, I don't know, I'm sure there is, I'm sure there's, you know, where there's a will, there's a
Where
way.
would that come out, do you know?
That actually, where that comes out, Mayor Craig, is on Colonial Road. So it's 2 blocks down from where the people are coming. And it goes through the bridges there at Cozarts. So basically, it's kind of probably on Cozarts right away down through there.
Okay.
So probably.
Okay.
So, but anyway, I don't know if there's a magic bullet to this. I do know that there's, of course, as you daydream and worry, we want to be able to do things. We talked about an overhead walkway there. An overhead walkway would solve it. At least the part about getting across Main Street, across West Main Street. But it's also going to be so expensive. You're looking at $500,000 to $750,000. And so, that's just, yeah. But, one of the things is, and I think that there's a possibility that it could be worked out, is because one of the direct contributors to this accident that happened that I saw was speed. They were coming through there and it says 35, they're doing 40. Because if they're doing over 40, John's gonna get them. But they're coming up through there. And what had happened, 2 vehicles, one was behind the other. This guy's buddy ran across the street and the car swerved to miss his buddy and hit him. And he was in the middle lanes. He wasn't in any of the traffic lanes. It was in the turn lane, and it just picked him right off. And until that maybe they put a grocery store on the other side or a little convenience store on the other side of the tracks over there closer to Abingdon Manor, I think it's going to be a continuing problem. It has been a continuing problem ever since that's been over there. Anyway, that's enough of that. So,
Because, for clarity, Abingdon Manor Renaissance House closed a year ago, and they've been closed for a year. I don't know if the plan is, I've heard they may reopen, I've also heard it may be reopened as residential, but they closed, which has sort of eased off a lot of pedestrian issues down there.
there is another nursing home on up this side. I'm not sure what the name of it is anymore, in the Green Victorian House. I don't know if they've closed or not.
Yeah, but that one's well, I want to say they're less ambulatory.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things, but irregardless of whether it's because the majority all work for Renaissance House, and that might have stopped it. But we have sidewalks down there, and those sidewalks beckon people to go down there and go to those businesses, whether it's the convenience store, whether it's Kaiser's, and going looking at Kaiser's, or whether it's going on down to Chef Heather's now, because I've seen quite a few people going to Chef Heather's. And actually, I guess it's probably people that are at the bank, at First Bank and Trust, go across the street to Chef Heather's, and there's no crosswalk there. And so, because of the lack of crosswalks, it's really a hindrance. It's maybe instead of 15 miles an hour, maybe 25 miles an hour would be a better fit to try to get the traffic calmed a little bit as you go down through there. But anyway, in my little notes I said 15, but while I would like maybe to see 15, I'm sure that wouldn't be a practical application.
Well, I'm glad you recognized 25, but you are nuts anyway.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. The other thing I wanted to talk about is one of the things is because as we come in, as you all and as somebody acknowledged a minute ago about being a new council, is there's some things that sometimes can fall through the cracks that not for no fault of your own, but just the lack of knowing what's going on. And we had a lot that's down on Colonial Road that's very detrimental to, that's right across from the muster grounds, which the muster grounds is 702 Colonial Road, and it's directly across from there, that there was a parking lot or a building lot that Barbara Ferris, who owns them, was most generously letting us use that, and has for years. About a year ago, Barbara indicated she would rather have a long-term lease and be paid because before it was donated, or she would be willing to sell this. And of course, there's all the different ways of buying something and giving tax credits and all kinds of stuff, as you all know. But what has happened is, just like tonight, there was no parking on that lot because she waited long. She waited for a certain amount of time, and then I guess has got it now where that it is roped off, or maybe the town has it roped off because the lease that we had has elapsed, which was a free lease, I think. We were mowing her. We mow that and do different things for her, but we have coming up in September 1,500 school children that will be coming over there over a period of 3 days, the 19th, 20th, and 21st of September. We also have another 60 reenactors and people who help with the children and different events that we have 15 stations. And during that, they have to find somewhere to park. Tonight, those cars park down on the actual muster grounds, which the National Park Service would have a duck if they knew that we did that, because that's actually kind of almost a desecration of a Virginia landmark now. And so, well, it's not a Virginia landmark, it's actually a national landmark. And so parking the cars on that grass down there, even though it's minute, it's a marshy area, and they're still gonna make, tire marks or prints, and so that would probably not be as acceptable or wanting to be, or a wanted use of that property on that side. Anyway, back to that. So, through no fault of anyone here, we did not have someone that we were able to negotiate with. And so, I ask you all if in your time that you can, have the town attorney or the new town attorney or the acting town attorney or whoever you're hiring for attorney to maybe contact Mrs. Ferris about the purchase or the lease for that. It is going to really create a tremendous safety hazard when the reenactors are there and we're getting 1,500 school children off the buses and there's nowhere for the parents to park. There's not only the reenactors, there's also the parents who park there. A lot of homeschools they're right there and they go around with the children. So it really can be a real safety issue. And so if we could look into that and see if that could be solved before, probably hopefully by the 1st of September. And then that way that would make that, and it also makes it a more palatable site for people who want to stop, and they're wanting to stop there to go to the site, but there's no parking place for them. And so that would help that issue also. Anyway, that's it.
Can I just add, I tried on 2 occasions to contact Mrs. Ferris with the funeral home. And this was before council rolled over prior to July 1. I spoke with her daughter, said she'd have her call me. She has not called me. 2 separate occasions. Workaround is there. We own that lot up just around the corner. I already spoke to Mr. Worley. He seemed to think we could mow that down. We could paint it for parking, directions. I don't know if you want to talk to Kevin, and if you think, that's a piece we already own. If you want to talk to Kevin and use that as a workaround, I think the benefit of that is it might be a little farther away, but I think tourism used it once already that way. And I talked to folks at tourism, they said it was really a nice walk. You didn't have to cross the street. So I don't know if that's
the average,
possible.
yeah, the average age of most of our reenactors is probably around 75 to 80. And to walk that distance like that can be very, tonight the ladies loved it because they were able to park on the field and they were able to walk 50 feet and they were at the tent for the picnic. It's a little more difficult to do that with older people, and I'm not calling you all older, but we have a lot of people that are. We have the Daughters of the American Revolution, who are a big component part of that, and the Sons of the American Revolution, the Over Mountain Victory Trail Association, the Worcester County School Board. All those people. That a lot of them are older and elderly, and also up there we also have camps up there. If y'all been down there, you know that kind of where that is located. We have it's actually the firing. It's where they fire the muzzle loading rifles up there and show the kids that. And so that's up in that area. Now, it could be worked around. Rain would be the detrimental thing to that. Originally that plan called, and I've asked somebody to give me that plan so that I can get it to you all. Originally that plan called for on Colonial Road, just past where Sonny Grogan lives, Charles Grogan, which is the last. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4th house back this side where you did muster grounds, traveling from east to west. That's where they were going to put up. That's where they were going to park. They were going to take that. They were going to driveway up through there. It connects to the condos at the top, and then that allowed them to go into the field and do that. And they were going to put a permeable gravel with the base like we have going down the driveway, to where they would hold it in place, but the water would seep. You get water seepage instead of having asphalt. Anyway, there's that plans out there, along with the cabin that was taken down over at the library that was scheduled to already be put up, and that fell through the cracks too. And that logged house was the Breckenridge house, and the Breckenridges That was the youngest person who on the March to Kings Mountain. He went with his father. I think he was 9 years old to go there when he went to that battle. And but anyway, that was their house was on the headwaters of the Holston, and putting it back kind of where it was planned on down at the muster grounds. It was within a mile of where that actually was taken from and put there at the library. And the library had one extra parking back there. They had asked us to give it to us and us to do something, and we were going to use that as part of the interpretive component down at the muster grounds. So, anyway, or taking too much of your all's time, but anyway.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you all.
Appreciate you coming. Ms. Miller, did you have something? You raised your hand.
No, when he was talking about the people crossing across the street there, I have seen, like, I've worked at Kaiser's for 20 years, and I see people come across and everything, and they come across in multiple places. They don't come across just at the crosswalks. And like I said, I know that we need crosswalks, but where they've got that, and it is, it does protect you if you're there inside, but it has created, it seems like we have more people trying to avoid them, and I don't see that many people actually. I mean, I see people come across there, but they're always on the other sides too. They're all over the place. And a lot of them do go, I hate to say it, which the Renaissance House, and I'm not throwing off on them, it has closed, but a lot of the people actually were going to the package store. And, they were coming down through there, and they wander up and down the streets, and they go across at any place. I don't know what the solution is. I'm not saying that I know a solution, but I'm saying that where that is at and where those barriers and everything are, they do promote a dangerous place with the traffic and everything, and it is too fast. It does need to be slowed down. So, maybe that right there would be the solution.
And just to address the barriers and the raised concrete there, and that is exactly what Wilma said was to protect the pedestrians. A lot of times the pedestrians get halfway across, but they're not going to be able to get all the way across. So and so that was why that was put there, was at least it gave them a little protection, false protection, but protection. It being raised and having the barriers there, if they made it halfway across, somebody would see them, so that they would either slow down. We actually had somebody hit there, and it was because that two cars were coming down. One car stopped to let the person across, and the other car swerved around them and hit the person. And so that's happened down there too. Luckily, they didn't kill them. Right, Bill? It would be worse. So.
Thank you. Next speaker is Angela Farmer.
I'm basically echoing what Wilma is saying. I work at 190 Patton Street at Social Services. I'm not here representing the state, okay, that you know that. I'm just a worker there. And several of my coworkers also are very concerned about mainly not the crosswalk, but that hunk of concrete that's there, because it's very difficult for us to get in and out at times. We have fleet cars that we're in. We drive different cars all the time, so, and then coming in and out of there. There's also other times out on personal, with our church-related activities, we go that direction. It's a well-traveled road, and at certain times of the day, it's very, very busy, and trying to get out and go to do our work is very difficult, especially if you're going to turn left. And then you've got people trying to get out of the gas station and trying to avoid that piece of concrete, because they're not really, you don't realize it's there until you're up on top of it. You have a crosswalk. You can see that because it's in the road. But to see that piece of concrete, and then you're on top of it, and people are trying to turn left to go into the gas station, or they're trying to get out of that to turn right, or it's really difficult. And I've seen a lot of close calls that way. I've not seen a lot of people crossing there. Of course, now that Chef Heather's is in, some of our workers, we will walk down there to Chef Heather's and things like that. And we have walked on the sidewalks. We stay on our side of the sidewalk, for health reasons or whatever. There are a lot of people walking on the sidewalks. But that piece of concrete is not at a very good place when you're trying to exit either the gas station or to come out of Patton Street and turning left. I did actually see one person finally crossing there, and because of it being a 4-lane, it's very difficult to see when, if you're in one lane and somebody's coming across and somebody in this lane sees them, and somebody else is not paying attention. And I noticed that, the two lanes coming down, this one woman was going across, people were slowing down for them, but one lane didn't notice them. You know, so it's that piece of concrete.
It's in a bad spot.
Yes,
It's just
it is in a bad spot, that piece of concrete is. And, you know, I'm all about walking, I don't, you know, I'm crossing the street and all that stuff, don't get me wrong there. But again, I can't emphasize enough that piece of concrete is the issue.
Okay.
You know, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was our last speaker. If anyone else came in that hasn't been heard, be glad to, Steve.
Hearing Joe Levon talk about the noise ordinance stimulated me to get up and make a further comment, if I might. In a previous council meeting, I did point out that, in my opinion, the present noise ordinance is totally inadequate. And years ago, I was the principal architect of the noise ordinance in Davis, California, and I'm volunteering myself to participate in any revision of the noise ordinance that might seem appropriate in the future.
Thank you for that. Okay, that concludes our public discussion item. Next item on the agenda is discussion regarding the Arthur Campbell Award. Mr. Sullivan.
I guess the main thing at this point is just to see if you do have anybody you want to submit for the Arthur Campbell Awards. If not, try again next year. So if there's a name that you have, we would encourage you to put those forward. And if not, please.
Is it the same protocol that was in before? Because that, I think if y'all look at that, if you streamline the protocol on that, you would get more people you would get more applicants to that. I think it's cumbersome. It might be, it's somewhat cumbersome.
It is. And that's really the only item we have. And so, for submissions, forward them on.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
We have made some mention of just continuing that. Is there any interest in that? Maybe putting that on the agenda, or do you all originally?
I don't think it's relevant anymore.
I mean, you know, the more I think about it, it's kind of, if I'm correct in saying this, I mean, we can, you know, give anybody at any time some sort of commendation or, you know, award.
You'd certainly be able to pass a resolution.
As a council, right, pass a resolution or something.
Sure.
And if we're not,
Proclamation.
yeah, I mean, if we're not really
Let's give it a
utilizing,
rest.
yeah, we're not really utilizing.
My opinion is that, you know, I don't know how you pick one person or anything like that. I mean,
Right.
people do things that you don't even know about.
Sure, sure.
And so I'm in favor of getting done away with it.
I think I'd be okay with
You want to put it on the agenda?
I really don't think that's necessary. If
Okay.
if there's no
I don't know about this.
Yeah, if there's no, you know, I don't think you have to formally vote to get rid of them unless you absolutely want to do that. If there's no names going to be put forward for the year, you know, we can leave it.
But does it come up again next year?
It can, if you all choose to address that. And, you know, it might be a thing since we do have 3 new members that you let it sit for a year and you look at it and you study it and then you
Let it rest for about 50 years.
Well, how many years has it been since we've even had anybody nominated?
This will be our second year of no nominations.
Okay, next item is discussion of the homesteading ordinance.
You know, Mr. Mayor, I read that ordinance again this afternoon, and it is really restrictive. Have you looked at, have you really
I've
actually
read
read
it,
it?
yeah.
What are social security numbers and all kinds of strange requirements in there? What does the town need people's social security numbers?
Because it's not an established business, we use that for collection of the tax purposes if they're outstanding.
Okay. There's a reason.
Yes.
It just seems to me to be inordinately restrictive.
You know, and I think reading.
If you want to have a wedding in the backyard, why can't you?
Parking is the big thing, Mr. Bradley,
I
with
can
that.
have one in my backyard. Parking, I understand, but parking is a problem everywhere. We have by neighborhood, people have parties up the street, and people park up and down the street. Yeah.
I think that the intent was that the venue, once established as a homestay, was not going to be rented as, for lack of a better term, because we have around here a party house, which, because of, well, the mayor's already touched on zoning issues and then, of course, parking issues. So I think that intent of putting that in there was, while we would allow the homestay, for a specified period of time throughout the year, this would not be a place where we would regularly schedule events. And that appears as, and Mr. Boswell will probably be the expert in this since he spent so much time, but it appears as we look at the language from these other places across the state, that appears to be the intent of these, that, we have places that are designed for weddings and parties and whatnot, zoned there by usage, as opposed to just me saying, oh, well, I'm a part of the homestay, and if you want to stay over longer, we can have a big wedding here as well. And I think that's what it looks like it's targeted.
Well, it seemed like to me that the main concern was the length of stay, and I'll just tell you, I can't vote for unlimited.
Have we given any consideration to maybe extending that just a little bit?
Yeah.
I mean, my fault is, and I don't know if we have access to this or if anybody would freely give us this information, but how many days would you really expect an Airbnb to rent out during the calendar year? I mean, 90 days seems like a fairly significant, 120 days, that's a third of the year, right? I'm just thinking,
Fairfax chose, I think their wording was 25% of the calendar year.
Which is one person that we had, that would satisfy him, and I don't know if there are other complaints about the ordinance or not. It seems like to me, and the way I understood him, if not all year round, he's not going to be happy. And probably that would be the case with anybody else. I don't know that. But the only other option that I know of, and Jason and I talked a little bit today, apparently there's not a problem with people complaining about what he's doing. Maybe that we could consider some process where if you want a longer period of time, then you go through a special use permit, go through the planning commission, get a special use permit to operate in an area that wouldn't be undesirable for residential areas. But I can tell you, if we take the lid off of this, you're going to see people pouring out subdivisions saying, hey, what in the world are you doing?
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is putting a business in a residential neighborhood. And
Especially like this weekend.
that's a no as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So I don't know the answer to it.
I wouldn't mind liberalizing the number of days. I think 90 days may be a little too restrictive. Maybe 180 days.
Like I said, I'm open to that suggestion if there's no.
I'm not open to 108 days, that's 6 months. I mean, the possibility you could have multiple, this could come like a type of business out. You could be buying vacant houses in residential areas and establishing businesses.
Well, I get that way, but you got to remember that tourism's part of our.
Yeah, I understand.
Part of our bread and butter here. And right now, we don't have much more to rely on.
I understand the issue. I wouldn't object to 120 days, I don't think, if you want to do that. But 180 days, that's pretty much.
120 days, that's a pretty significant portion of the year, And if we allowed that and then had the option for a special permit to possibly appeal to, it seems like a lot of.
Keep in mind, you always have the option for them to be a B&B.
That's true.
And I think that's sort of the jump off point. And it's, I see the intent is, if you're gonna do 90 days a year and you want to do it full time, why aren't you a B&B? And to me, that's how I see the language in the code pointing, Jason. I don't know, am I?
Well, that's part of the problem, is B&Bs are restricted to their zoning, Airbnbs are not.
Okay.
So, okay, it's kind of a give and take, situation. I would be open to 120 days, but I don't know that anything more than that would
Right.
be.
Well, what about this idea of a special use permit for someone who is in a, you know, homestay applies to all zones. What if somebody is in not a residential neighborhood, in a different zoning, could we not allow a special use permit?
Homestead only applies to residential.
Yeah, I don't know.
But you have residences in other zones.
Yeah, but it must be a residence, so everything, it's gotta be a residential zone.
I understand.
So,
No, you can have residences in other zones, though.
homestay must be residential by ordinance.
But
It's gotta
you
be
could-
residential dwelling.
You could live
It's
in
gotta
a
be your
house.
primary residence,
in a-
right, and your primary residence.
You could live in a house in another zone, right, other than residential?
You could. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got, you know, loft apartments and
Probably
things that
quite
are
a few.
primary residence that people could, you know, potentially start a homestay if they want to, as long as it's their primary residence. But I don't, as far as a special exemption or a special use permit, I don't know that that's the
don't
route
think
that we're
that's
supposed to
a-
go down.
I don't know.
I think we just stick with a number,
A number.
120.
120
I mean,
seems-
that's 4 months. That's 30 a year.
I mean, I'm with you, Wayne. Like, if somebody set up camp beside my house and was renting it all year long, having a party house, I would be here too. So I think you have to
I
cap
don't
it.
think we'd get, I mean, like I say, we're gonna have an uprising. I mean, a real uprising before it gets out, we're allowing businesses in residential areas.
What if it was 120 days?
Oh, I know, it's 120 days could still be a burden, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know,
I don't know.
You know, and if you look at the wording in Fairfax same thing, must be permanent residents of the property they offer. Property may be rented for 60 days per calendar year. Guests are limited to 6 adults. They must be associated on the same rental contract. They must identify an authorized agent, which we have that, will be available to address problems. Operators must have one designated parking space available for lodgers. Regardless of where posted, advertising must include the operator's short-term lodging permit number, which we don't have at the present time, and identify the location of the parking space. They may not be rented for commercial purposes like parties, weddings, and fundraisers, and they must be available for inspection upon request by the code enforcement division. You know, we're restricted, we're not this restricted. You know, and it's tough. I mean, I think one of the things with this and some of the history was, you know, as this got started, no one had it perfected, and the feeling I think across the state was there are things that you're going to have to work out as you go forward, and this is one of those things.
We get calls weekly from other localities asking, you know, how we're handling this situation because it's so new. I mean,
Clearly, it's becoming an
yeah,
issue.
It's just gonna be, it's a learning curve.
As an aside, the gentleman spoke and he mentioned Airbnb, which is a website. We have communicated with Airbnb. We have about 20 to 25 places registered on Airbnb, which are in the town. We only have 5 licensed under homestay. Airbnb, though, has started collecting taxes for localities, and I'm pretty sure we had a draft ordinance sent to us today. Am I correct, Kim? We had a draft ordinance from Airbnb that we will be pursuing, where at least we can collect taxes from these people who have not registered, and then we can sort of backtrack and make sure that we get the ones who are not licensed, make sure we get them licensed and inspected going forward. That will do 2 things. That will either drive some people out of the market, or it'll bring us more compliance. And you know, here again, I think I hear people talking about the time, but I still think some of the issue is fairness, that make sure that we're all staying on playing on the same page.
Our application fee is much lower than the localities that have adopted the ordinance as well. I think
ordinance is proposing $200 for a 2-year permit versus $25 application fee.
Well, Fairfax is the expensive
That's
place.
a different world.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at upgrade, let's look at changing the limit to 120 days. If that's the consensus of opinion here, get on with it.
Okay. I guess we would need, I don't know if we've got consensus. Are you all right with that?
I mean, it's touch and go. I see both sides of it. Like I said, if it were beside my house, I
You
would,
wouldn't like 100
I would probably
days.
wouldn't like 100. I mean, I'm just being
Well,
honest with you.
we need
you know.
to, we need to be careful about
Yeah.
what we do. You know, I don't want to unhinge, undercut the subdivision ordinance or the,
Right, sure.
and get those people upset. I don't know what to do right now. Joe, did you want to say
I was gonna
something?
make a suggestion. Washington County does not.
Can you step up?
Sure.
Sorry.
Washington County does not have an ordinance now. So Airbnb outside of the town of Abington is what it was in Abington a year ago. I'd suggest the town reach out to Washington County because there's a big difference between the people in Abington as you go forward versus the Airbnb people that are operating in Damascus. And as a county and a town, it would be good to try to early on bring things together instead of go divergent.
It's always good to work with the county.
It's true.
But I do think we have, you know, the pieces and parts in place to.
How do these things work? If I lease my house out as an Airbnb, do I move out while these other people move in and stay there?
No.
It's not an Airbnb.
Yeah, your buddies, like you just hang out together while they're there.
It's the odd couple.
Yeah, you can,
Yeah.
you can do that for 90 days, can't you?
No,
30.
ours is 30.
I'm sorry, 30,
But
I'm sorry, 30, yeah. You can be out
Right.
for 30 days.
But for the most part, people like just hang out, you know.
They come and go, you know.
Coexist.
Yeah, there you go, there you go. I mean, I want to make, you asked me a question, I want to
Yep.
answer it. I want to make as many people happy as we can, but it sounds like you said before, we're not going to be able to please everybody.
No.
So I think we're just going to have to make
I
the
think
calls.
Cindy
it's not
should
gonna
be
be the other
here
way.
before
I mean,
we.
And I don't know,
Yeah,
I
we're-
mean, we've just heard one person
Sure.
also. You know, how do other people feel?
But you know, the other side of that fence is
Yeah,
the
that-
bed and breakfast that
that's right.
want a fair playing field, which is everybody charging taxes to some degree, you know.
And you know, in the 5 people that we have registered as homestay,
Yeah.
you know, for them, you know, for Mr. Brennan that spoke, I mean, he's registered as a homestay.
Yeah.
And you know, he goes through the inspection, he pays his fees.
Sure.
He does all the stuff that, you know, 20 or 25 other people in this town are not doing. So, you know, I think, you know, on the backside, we do have to do a little more on getting everybody in compliance no matter which way we go.
Well, I think Cindy should be here. Would everybody be okay with let this lay for, until the next work session and Cindy's here? And maybe we can come up with something else to make Mr. Brennan happy. I can't think of anything now, but I'd like for her to be here first. Before we decide. Is that all right with everybody? Just let the light on.
In the interim, if between now and then, we can have Mr. Boswell get all this good new information that he dug up today, Ms. Kingsley, and she can forward it to you all, just so you can see what other localities are doing.
Is there any way you could get any idea whether there is a shortage of these types of accommodations in town, Jason? Is there any possible way that you could determine that?
I can do my best, Mr. Craig.
Can I make a comment?
No, you're not the public,
I don't
you're
wanna-
not a councilman.
I'm not a public.
Come on.
I'll speak as a resident. I've stayed in a lot of Airbnbs. I'll give you a little perspective. We had an employee here, I will not name, who, a couple, they rented out their couch. They charged like $20 a night, but they loved it. And when they didn't want to rent it, they pulled it down, and when they did, they had a good experience. Met a lot of friends. I've got 4 kids who've traveled the world, and they use Airbnb as their method of places to stay. I've stayed in the woods in a yurt. I've stayed in a tree house. I've stayed in empty houses in Phoenix, Arizona, at the Grand Canyon. Our family uses Airbnb as our travel option for places to stay. We've had very good experiences. Most of our experiences are we rent places where people are not present. I don't rent and go stay in somebody's spare bedroom. Although they're all over on Airbnb. I rent a house, or I rent a strange, we like to rent things that are weird, like tree houses and sheds and tents, things like that. But let me tell you this, it's not because it's cheaper. I mean, we've paid from $150 to $350 a night. So it's not that you've just got people, offering cheap places to stay. We go for the experience. And that's what I think about when I think about Abingdon. It's about experience. Most of the time, if you give people the freedom to make the choice, I'm not saying you won't have the problem issues, and I don't know that good regulations aren't necessary, but if you make it open enough where people can create an experience so that when people come through town, they say, wow, I want to stay there because that just sounds cool, and create a memory. That's my 2 cents worth. I thought it was worth sharing with you since I've been listening to you upstairs. Just my thoughts.
Okay, Steve, go ahead.
I have to acknowledge being listed on Airbnb, but not for Abingdon, for a little village in France. I have rental properties over there. They are not my principal residences, obviously, so they're rented as houses, and I have a caretaker and so forth. But yeah, it's the coming thing in the tourism business, is Airbnb. I don't like the idea of businesses in neighborhoods either, residential neighborhoods, but it's a very big deal these days.
Maybe we could think about restricting this to zones or something, I don't know, but let's, I think we really need to think about this. I don't want people in subdivisions coming down on us saying, hey, you're opening this up for people, businesses in our neighborhoods. I don't want to hear that, so, and I don't want them in my neighborhood. Not necessarily an Airbnb that operates for 90 days, but I certainly don't want businesses in my neighborhoods. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the discussion of the crosswalk on West Main Street. Mr. Sellers.
I think I will defer to our resident expert, Mr. Bold.
And he's an expert on something. He's a resident expert. You're a resident expert. Do you know about Airbnbs?
Well, no.
Go ahead.
I did not know much about Airbnbs. If I was smarter, I would have rented out a room for this weekend for the race. I wish I had done that. But that's 2 weekends, not 90 days.
But before he gets started, did you all get the correspondence I think Kim sent out? In regards to his file? Okay, I just want to make sure that you guys, okay.
And I do just want to start by saying that I'm not here tonight to really make a firm recommendation on the crosswalks in general. I focused my research on if if we were starting from scratch, would this crosswalk really be warranted? And I can pretty clearly say from that focus that it would not be. There's really a minimum number of pedestrians that you really need to have in an area before you can put a crosswalk in an uncontrolled intersection. Otherwise, you've just given the few pedestrians that are there a false sense of security. People start, I hear several people said that the people are crossing that West Main Street and they're in a crosswalk, they feel safe. Well, they're not. We've maybe made a problem worse by giving them this sense, and so people aren't as careful as they should be. It doesn't meet a lot of drivers' expectations. You're driving in a 35 zone with a 4-lane road with a turn lane. I don't expect to have a crosswalk there. As I'm driving around. When I moved back to Abingdon, this is interesting. This is a crosswalk in a 4-lane section with a crosswalk. That being said, I feel that's a long stretch between Preston down to really Porterfield. The sidewalks end kind of at Chef Heather's and at Hatton Street, so that there's not a place closer to Highway 19 to cross. There's a long stretch without some sort of pedestrian consideration. So I'm not here tonight to really make a recommendation about what the answer is. But again, if you want to say, is a crosswalk warranted, it's really not in that location. To meet the speed and the traffic light requirements, you really need to have something that's more like the traffic signal there, or the pedestrian signal there at the border. Where pedestrians can activate it, it has some flashing lights, something a little more active. But it's hard to justify that when you only have 7 to 8 pedestrians a day. You really need to get into the 60+ pedestrians to really start to get into these recommendations.
Are crosswalks usually associated with traffic signals?
Often, yes. Traffic signals.
That's how they work best.
Yeah,
when you're stopping traffic hitting.
Yes.
Matt,
By just you don't really have to even mark a crosswalk at a traffic signal. It's kind of understood by law. That's a crossing. That is a crossing. Again, there's no signals once you get past Wall, Russell, to Porterfield. It's a good mile. So,
A couple of questions, Matt. Mr. Humphreys raised the idea, and you have too, to the extent that there's a large area that doesn't have a crosswalk. Do you think there's any merit in us employing someone a consultant to look at pedestrian volumes, or maybe we can do it in-house? I don't know if we can or not.
I'd want to get someone that has a little more expertise, specialized expertise in that. If we could,
what?
I would want to have someone with a little more specialized expertise in that.
What do you
to
think
really
about hiring someone?
I don't have a problem with going out and trying to find out how much something like that would cost, because I don't have a good idea how much that would be.
I think my thought is I think the crosswalk there is a hazard. I agree with the people that spoke. I think it should be taken out, in my opinion. But on the other hand, I think we should go ahead and do that anyway, but I think we should look at this issue of pedestrians on West Main Street and consider the speed limit and the other things that they've been talking about tonight. And I think we need a traffic consultant to do that, or some type of consultant. That's my thought. Pat, what do you think about those two?
Certainly think it's a good idea. I know it's not in this year's budget, but we'd have to reallocate some.
We'll have to make some magic then, I guess.
Are there any old pedestrian studies that we can dig up that might address that issue?
I haven't found one for West Main Street.
I don't remember any.
It's more the historic downtown area. It's got a few studies, but nothing specific.
What do you think about going out with an RFP and figuring out what the costs and see if we can find some?
I think a wise first step would just be to maybe just reach out to some firms and just get an idea of how much it might cost.
Okay. All right.
And then I can report back if it's $2,000. I think that's a definite. If it's $17,000, maybe we need to think about it a little bit more.
Since we know that what we've got doesn't meet standards, what's your advice about Should we leave it, or you think we should tear it down?
If it was focused solely on that intersection, I'd say that it's probably safer to take it out. I would take it out.
All right.
The only caveat with that is, gosh, I feel what would worry me, we take it out and then 2 weeks later is an accident. But it could be an accident 2 weeks from now anyway, with an end.
There could be an accident with it.
There could be an accident with it too.
If we wait,
Next week, there could be an
take it
accident.
out, we could have a T-bone anytime, right?
Anytime.
Yeah, I've swerved around that thing myself.
Yeah, I went out and, I don't travel Patton very often, but I went out in one of our bigger town vehicles. I borrowed a town truck from the shop and I drove around that area and, I didn't have any problem making a left out of Patton. So I think, again, it's anecdotal evidence, but I think if you're paying attention and you're going slow, you shouldn't be hitting the concrete. I mean, I made the turn easily in one of our biggest trucks.
Have you been there in the morning when people, during the peak hour in the morning? I think it's I tried it in my 4Runner, and it was of course, I'm old, and I don't drive very well, but making, if you're trying to get out to work in the morning and you got 4 lanes of traffic, when the eastbound lane is clear, most of the time the other 2 lanes aren't, and I think people are trying to stay in that left lane. There's no middle lane for them to sit in, and I think they're hitting that concrete because it's really hard to do what I'm talking about. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
I couldn't hardly stay in the lane. I mean, I had to be very, very careful, but I was able to do it, but I can see where it's a problem. During peak hour times when people are trying to get out.
You raise a valid point considering the time. That is one section of town that sits almost perfectly east-west. And in the morning, if you're coming into town, you got the sun in your face, and in the afternoon, and we've all driven that section and thought, goodness gracious, you could hardly see the road.
Valley Street's bad.
Yeah, so, and I don't know, and Lieutenant Holbrook ran you some crash numbers. If you wanted to speak about that, he can, in conjunction with what Mr. Bowler has already mentioned, and he provided a pretty clear report on sort of how the scope of the accidents have changed since that island was installed. And if you would,
It's pretty clear.
yeah, and that largely is due to, just as you were saying, you have to pull out into the travel lane to go left, and a lot of times you're extended into the travel lane before you can make your turn. So that does create a problem. I don't know if you've had any questions for Lieutenant Holbrook. He's the resident crash expert.
Well, what do you think? Rip it out or what?
My opinion is anytime you put anything in the middle of the road, somebody's gonna hit it. Whether it be, whether it be the
Including
crosswalk signs or a concrete block.
Including your T-honey boo, right?
So if we remove obstacles from the roadway, I think it would make the roadway safer.
Okay.
We did have a question for law enforcement, and we were discussing this internally with staff, and we actually, no one knew for certain, is it legal to, if you're, say the crosswalk wasn't there, is it legal to turn into the center turn lane and wait for the traffic in the other direction to clear? And then go over, like Cumming Street or most of the other West Main? Is that actually legal, or is that just frowned upon?
I want to answer that. Yes, it's legal, and the recommended way to do it is to go 100 feet. But if you go further than 100 feet, the cops got to take measures, and you're going to get a ticket.
Well, it makes me mad when people sit in that middle lane and think, this is not an accelerated lane, I don't know.
Yeah, that led to a lot.
None of you can't get out of Kroger without going in the middle lane.
I just don't believe in it.
That led to a tangent conversation in-house, and some people were strong with that. That's illegal. But I said, I don't know if it's illegal or not, or just frowned upon.
You actually can use that travel lane for up to 100 feet.
So
I think my number's right, 100 feet.
I want to say 150. 50, but I'd have to.
Okay, yeah, I know the magic number, once we travel 300 the length of a football field, we're in violation, and we've made charges for that in front of Kroger. But it's, oh yeah, well, they're all accident related, but it is a legal traffic maneuver.
Okay.
It is permissible by law, and I think the code limits, maybe it's 150. I'll defer to the lieutenant, because he's much smarter than I am.
So technically, you're supposed to use that then as a waiting area, not acceleration. You're supposed to wait for a gap. Or it's not an exit ramp, or it's not an entrance ramp to the interstate. I mean, where you're trying to accelerate.
The terminology used in the code is it's a holding or turning lane.
Okay.
So you can hold in that lane to make a turn either way, but it extends it out to, I'd have to research it, 100 or 150 feet. So it's not a complete travel lane. Now, once you're in that lane, it's considered a travel lane, but you're limited to how far you can go. And it's for turning purposes.
Interesting.
They do.
Turning out or turning
You know, I
in.
used First Bank of Trust right next to Burger. And I kid you not, they're sitting in that middle lane, waiting to go out into the right lane, just sitting there, and you can't turn into the bank. You just sort of have to, it's just,
Yeah,
I like,
we went out a long tangent on that conversation. Everybody started saying, "Yeah, in front of Kroger, in front of Harrisburg Trust." So
I quit doing that when I'm in a car coming the other direction.
That ain't fun, is it?
No more.
Ouch.
All right, Matt, would you, Tony, can we get some idea what this study would cost?
We can. I think Matt knows the people to contact. We can get some estimates, and we can report back to you either at the council meeting or at the next, or we can just send you correspondence just to let you know, make a decision.
All right, thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
Guys, do you want to put this on, are you ready to vote on this? Do you want to put it on the agenda for the next session for consideration of removing the crosswalk?
Well, if I can interject also with that, did we ever find out if it was council action that put it on?
There,
Minutes.
the only thing in the minutes that Ms. Kingsley was able to cover was on January 5th, 2015, there was an inquiry by Mr. Humphreys about traffic calming issues. Mr. Dew provided that the standards stated that the standards provided by VDOT did not indicate a need for a crosswalk there. And then part of the discussion, Mr. Kelly had suggested having the railroad fence either side of the tracks to keep people from crossing the railroad tracks at that point. Ms. Lowe inquired about adding signage to control foot traffic in that area, but that was the only mention of it. This was not a council direction. I spoke to Mr. Dew today on a different matter, and he goes, no, I was just told to do it.
I'll sorry to defer to Mr. Sullivan about how he wants to proceed, but I don't think it requires council action to install or remove. If it's or an official motion at the council meeting.
If you wanted to remove, I mean, there was no, I think in the interest of safety, the manager has the discretion to implement or not. And
Okay.
If it's the will of council to make it disappear, we will, but also I'm somewhat confused because I'm also hearing, we want to study to look at the pedestrian traffic.
Well, I think, here's my thought. I think that we probably should look at the speed limit. There is a long stretch, but that, to me, that's a separate issue of something sitting in the road that's not desirable. That's my opinion. And if you want, what do you think?
I personally would like to see that concrete bevel come out of the median. I mean, that's just a disaster waiting to happen. I mean,
I take Matt's point about it being giving pedestrians a false sense of security.
yeah, it's like a holding spot, but it's not really a holding spot.
Yeah.
Somebody just has to veer into the concrete. But no, I think that's a disaster waiting to happen.
well, I believe Rick himself used the word, I wrote it down, false protection.
Yeah, I mean, I just honestly.
I didn't hear you, Don.
Rick himself, I used the word false protection.
Okay. Well, what do you want to do, Tony?
We'd be happy to remove the whole thing. I mean, it's obvious there's a problem, and there's a problem on two senses. One, that you do have to look at pedestrian usage. However, I do know that Matt sent some folks down there to try to capture door to door how many people they see crossing the street, and that number was less than 7 in a day. So that, that doesn't meet the threshold number. I think in the interest of, traffic safety, the island needs to go, and in the interest of pedestrian safety, I think the crosswalk needs to go.
The crosswalk, if you leave the crosswalk, it's definitely not in compliance.
Right. No, no.
So I don't think we should leave the crosswalk there if we tear the concrete out.
And that section being 5 full lanes at 35 miles an hour, which is really 45 miles an hour, you cannot expect a reasonable person of any fitness in heavier traffic conditions to go from north to south without encountering traffic without an island refuge. I understand the purpose of the island, I get it, but wrong space, wrong place, speeds are too high. If you're asking me what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna say we should tear it out.
All right. Man, I've got one more question. Excuse me.
Probably should be closer to the liquor store anymore.
Well, I drive, I don't walk. Man, I have one more question. Do you think it's possible that we, on the infrastructure committee, Mike Surratt indicated connectivity, and we might be eligible for sidewalks. Do you think it would make any sense to apply for some funding from VDOT? I've been in TDOT territory before, so I get confused. Do you think there would be any merit in him looking at applying for a grant to build a sidewalk along Preston Street to connect the urban path? Does the urban path come up Elm Street?
Urban path will goes on Elm Street, up Fuller to RCPO, and then turns to RCPO.
Do you think there's any merit in looking at that? So that you can, at least we start to get from Bradley to Preston.
It's gonna be on Preston from, right, it runs on Hagee, it turns right on Preston, and then left on Elm. So it would take to get from, then it would just need to be from Hagee along Preston up to West Main Street then. Because there will be some new sidewalk on Preston as part of the urban trail.
Oh, there is?
There will be, but going the opposite direction. It's not going to cross the railroad tracks. It's going the other way.
Yeah, but we've got a sidewalk on West Main Street, so we would be connecting logical termini.
Right.
Do you think there's any merit in doing that?
I think it's a good place for it.
Okay. And Council, I guess I assumed that you all wanted to look at some type of a study. I don't,
I think a study would be great if it's not gonna cost a cumbersome
How about you,
amount.
Don?
But I still think we should really tear that contract. That's my opinion.
I think we've got a clear consensus on what to do with
Well,
this.
the only thing about a study, and I guess this is included in the study, but, as long as we have that speed there, I'm not sure that any kind of crosswalk will work.
Well, part of the study, Don, I would think would be to look at the speed limit. And there are certain criteria for speed that we could include in the study and look and see whether that area should be 35 or 25. Okay.
Well, we will proceed with removal. We'll put that on Public Works calendar, as Mr. Bowler can make them available.
Probably put it in when we do our fall repaving. Probably try and do it at the same time, so that way when you eradicate the crosswalk, you can just pave over it, so there's no, not even a trace of the crosswalk there. We'll probably shoot for late September or early October.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, guys, anything else you want to talk about tonight? If not, I declare us adjourned. We made it.